Hi, friend. Thank you for joining us at Pasture Experience Podcast. This podcast, inspired by Psalm 23, is a safe space to be honest with yourself, experience the Trinity on your own pasture journey, and join our soul-nourishing conversations wherever you are on your spiritual path. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you feel encouraged and known. Today we're talking about unclimbing the someone ladder to experience his mysterious guidance. So I was at a bookstore, and it was a used bookstore in our town. And when I go in, I kind of pay attention to what shimmers, what I'm drawn to. And I found this yellow spine, and I sat down on the floor, and I was reading this book called Hope for the Flowers. And I found myself ugly crying in the middle of this bookstore because this book, written almost 50 years ago, was just speaking so much to my soul about the idea of unclimbing, even though sometimes we're unsure of what we're unclimbing and descending and walking into. And so today I want to invite you just to listen to this idea of what does it look like to unclimb in order to experience his mystery and God's guidance, even in the unknown. So part of my unclimbing journey, and I'm curious how you resonate with this, but when we started this whole idea of sort of surrendering ego, when I kind of found myself asking, what am I holding tight to? What am I finding my worth and my identity in? A lot of it surrounded in the roles that I did, and I loved them. I was an author. I was a speaker. I found myself on a stage, and part of this journey toward coming out into this open space of the pasture has been one where I just found myself desiring to unclimb, to be closer to my truest self. And it's just been quite the journey because it doesn't make sense. And I'm realizing that that is completely faith. Faith doesn't usually make sense. There's a mysterious stirring to it. There's an invitation into the unseen, and it's also so freeing to unclimb. And so you may be asking, well, what were you unclimbing? And I feel like when I say that, I mean that I was unclimbing the capital S in someone, me being the someone. I was unclimbing the platform and the stage and all the things that come with that. And I just felt this draw to, again, go toward the small is sacred and the intimacy and the small groups and the down home souls, and found myself tired of feeding the machine. And I can't help but wonder if you resonate with that as well. That when you think of who you are as a someone, what do you think of? What is it that you associate yourself with? What are the titles that you give yourself? What are you good at? But if you peel off those layers, who are you underneath? Who is the shepherd inviting you to be in the unclimbing? And so I'm reading this book, Hope for the Flowers, and it's talking about this little butterfly, this little caterpillar that is descending this pillar. I call it the someone, that someone ladder. And he starts to ask the question, gosh, there has to be something more. And I think that's the most beautiful question to ask with any journey that we're on is, what if there's something more? What if that hunger, that desire for kind of shaking up the status quo or going against the grain, not for the sake of challenging just to be a nuisance, but really to kind of enter into the heart of a longing for something deeper and something truer and something, a place where God is when it doesn't make sense. And so this story kind of leads you through this journey of this caterpillar descending, unclimbing in hope, and he's walking into something he doesn't know. And I feel like that so often in my life. I feel like I intentionally started asking, what is bringing life? What is life giving? What naturally comes out of a space of overflow? Um, and I would love to ask that question to you. What is bringing you life? What feels light inside in your spirit, in your soul? What feels heavy? Um, what feels like this thing that you have to hold on to or everything else will topple? Um, what would it look like to surrender that and put that down? Um, and I feel like that with faith. I feel like the more we journey kind of intentionally stepping away from the big and the glamour, we start to experience this really mysterious part of who God is when he says, I actually am the one that is filling you. I'm actually pulling off anything that doesn't fit to bring glory to him. And that's the most beautiful part of the journey. And so I've been kind of stepping into that for the last couple of years. And in a world where I'm, have so many dear author friends, and they'll say, okay, I have to do this thing, but then I have to market this. And I just at some point say, are you having fun? Are you enjoying yourself? Do you feel alive? Do you feel like this is coming from a space of overflow? And each of them have a different response. And no journey is the same. There's a need for all the different ways that we live alive and with God alive in us. And so I'm curious for you today, how do you view yourself as a someone? Is it attached to what you do? Is it attached to what you offer? Do you feel like if you pull the slats out underneath you that everything will fall? Or do you feel like there's a foundation underneath you? I think that's why I'm so drawn to the imagery of a pasture, is that we can all be in different parts of the field, but our feet are on level ground. And there's something really tethering and connecting about knowing that he is there when we don't have anything else to offer, when we don't have anything else to produce. It's the mystery of how he stirs and he woos us and draws us toward him. There's this verse that I was reading the other day. Often in the morning, I'll turn over, and before I do anything else, I'll grab my phone and look at what the verse of the day is on the YouVersion app. And I came across this verse, and then I kept going to the rest of them, and I came across Matthew 3:12, and it said, "His winnowing fork is in his hand, and he will clear his threshing floor, gathering his wheat into the barn and burning up the chaff with unquenchable fire." And if you have a chance to go back and reread that, it's Matthew 3:12. It was so beautiful as I thought, okay, I really resonate with, he's clearing the threshing floor, he's gathering the wheat into the barn, like he's burning up the chaff, the leftovers that aren't necessary. But I wasn't familiar with this term, winnowing fork. And so I started looking it up, and the winnowing fork are those, they use them, back in the days, and they had those three prongs, and the women would take their baskets of wheat, and they would hold the fork up in the air, and they would turn the basket over, and they would kind of let the wind carry the chaff away, but the good stuff, like the hardy wheat, would fall to the floor, and that's what they would gather up and store in their barns for the winter. And it was just this beautiful reminder that God is winnowing you, and he's winnowing me, and he's winnowing all of us in our own individual paths to experience his glory fulfilled in us individually. And so that looks so different. And I can't help but wonder, what is it that he is funneling you toward, or winnowing you in? And what in that do you need to grieve that is coming off, or it's not staying? I think often this unclimbing journey, there's been a lot of lament associated with it, because it means I've had to pull off or surrender, or even without me choosing. There's been things that I've gone for and experienced rejections, or jobs that didn't work, or friendships that just didn't feel easy. And not that easy, I'm always one to continue to push in, but not life-giving. And I can see how often God funnels and winnows our path. And he pulls off what's not supposed to be in order for us to stay the course and to stay focused on him, to kind of keep the main thing the main thing. And so what does that look like in your journey? What is he winnowing? If he were to hold you up and hold your life up and turn you over, what is the beautiful, the hardy, the core of who he's made you to be? What if that would fall to the ground as like treasured seeds? And what if that part would say, he'd say, this is extra, this doesn't fit. I think that's the beautiful part of so many of our journeys, is that oftentimes what led us to this space right now, some of it stays, but then some of it is left behind. And so what does that look like for you in this winnowing journey, in this unclimbing, in this surrendering the ego, surrendering the comfort, surrendering the stuff that makes us look good, but if we really were honest and we walked away from it, what is God really ultimately pulling us closer to his heart for? What is part of that winnowing look like for you? And for me, I can just see so clearly now, years out, where I can say, oh my gosh, I was unclimbing because I had this stirring that I didn't want to stay in the machine, that I didn't want to stay in the machine. I felt called to descend the ladder and to lay the ladder down and sit among the rungs and be with down home souls, because I am most at home and most alive with those who are broken, because I am them and they are me. I want to sit with the people who have said, marriage feels so scary. We've gone through financial upsets. We're trusting, but we have no clue why circumstances aren't matching up. My faith feels, far away. My kids aren't listening. Like, life isn't going as planned. And I just see how God has allowed me to experience those, as the world would say, rejections or hard things, ultimately to look them in the eye and to look you as I'm talking with you right now and say, that winnowing ultimately offers compassion, and it offers humility, and it offers a space to say, nothing you says scares me. I get it. I hear you. I've experienced that. I haven't walked your journey, but I can't help but wonder what God is pulling away because it no longer fits, so that ultimately he can walk you into the most beautiful ways that he is alive in you. And so I say that to encourage you, if you're in a season, if you're in a pasture part of your journey where you sense that winnowing, you sense that descending, and in front of you there are no road signs, there are no arrows saying go this way or you're doing a good job, continue trusting his voice and continue listening and knowing that he will not take away anything that doesn't fit. And he is a God of, he's not a God of scarcity. He's a God of abundance. And so he has ample room and space and time. And this unclimbing will surely bring about the winnowing for his glory. As I talked about in the book in the beginning, the Hope for the Flowers, I cannot wait to invite you to join our soul nourishing conversation next week, because our guest is the author. Her name is Trina Paulus, and she is this spicy rock star of a soul. She's 88, and you can join us for that via Skype on the YouTube channel below in our show notes. But for those that are in a season of unclimbing, continue trusting. You are not alone, and I know that what you're experiencing will ultimately bring God the most glory of him alive in you. As always, thank you for taking time out of your space and your day to join us here at Pasture Experience Podcast. I hope that you were able to, during our time, just listen to yourself and experience a new nugget of how the shepherd is inviting you and meeting you. And I'd love to just end our time reading Psalm 23 over you as you go about your day. May you know that he is with you, regardless of what your circumstances look like. Psalms 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. And surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Grace and space to you today.